Thank you for joining us today. This is the Forsyth County Republican Party, and this is a conversation with one of the candidates running for school board. The Forsyth County Republican Party does not endorse any candidate nor any candidate's committee in the primary, but this is an opportunity for you, the voter, to educate yourself about who to vote for. The candidate today we have is running for Winston-Salem Forsyth County School Board in District 2 in the Republican primary. His name is Bob Weiss, and we thank you for listening to this conversation. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Bob.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Bob Weiss. I'm here in Winston-Salem, actually in District 2. My wife and I moved up here because our older daughter was living up here. She went to graduate school at Wake, found a guy that she loved, married, and said that they were going to stay here. When I decided to retire and my wife decided that she was going to look for a different position where she was, and I'll explain that in a minute, we looked up here and my daughter said, initially we were looking at Lake Norman or the mountains or someplace, and then finally my daughter said, we'd like you to be closer to us. And for those of you that have adult kids, you know that when your adult kid tells you that they want you closer to them, that is the ultimate compliment. So when my daughter and my son-in-law said, we'd like you to move up, we decided to do that. Now, we didn't realize, and they didn't tell us, that they had plans to start a family. So about 3 months later, my daughter did announce that she was in fact pregnant, and we do now have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, 5-year-old little granddaughter and a 3-year-old grandson. And for the first 2.5 years of my granddaughter's life, I babysat for her 3 days a week. So she and I have an amazing relationship. Oddly enough, for some of you who are sports fans, you may remember a young woman named Sage Steele who was on ESPN. Sage's father was a year ahead of me at school. He was an All-American football player. And one year they being ESPN, was doing the Veterans Week broadcast at West Point. And her father's mural was on the side of the stadium. And one of her colleagues asked Sage, she said, what do your kids call your father? And she said, well, you got to remember that we were a military family, and we had Saturday morning room inspections, and we had Wednesday night dinners. And so my kids call my father Colonel. My daughter at that moment, who was sitting with me, said, that's what my kids are going to call you. So my grandkids call me Colonel, and all of their friends call me Colonel, and all of my daughter's friends call me Colonel. So if you ever hear somebody refer to me as Colonel, that's kind of the reason why. And I blame it back to Sage Steele. And we knew Gary and Sage, we knew Gary and his wife as we were being stationed around the world. And so when Sage was born, I was there, and I knew that's how that all came about. So now, that's why I'm here in Winston-Salem. To give you a little background, I went to undergraduate school at West Point, and I went to graduate school in Boston at Boston University. I have a master's in business, and I have a BS in engineering, math, and pre-med from West Point. My jobs throughout the Army, I spent about I think just a little bit shy of 28 years on active duty. I had many leadership roles. The command roles were the best. Working with the soldiers and the troops were just fabulous. There's nothing better than being a platoon leader, company commander, and dealing with young people and seeing how they work and being able to help them turn into wonderful adults. So I loved my time on active duty. I didn't necessarily love my time away from my family, but it was what we had to do. And if I look back, I would say that I would do it all over again, including going to West Point. Now, when I was at West Point, we did have a saying there that the best view of West Point was in our rear view mirrors because it wasn't the easiest place to go to school, especially when our friends were doing different things. So after I retired from the Army, I was recruited by a number of different companies, and fortunately, because of different relationships I had, and I think because of my leadership background, I was offered jobs with big corporations, and I ran a couple of divisions for a company named Schlumberger, which is a very large corporation in the world. And I've had CFO and CEO roles doing that. So to summarize my background, I would say 28 years of leadership, accountability, and working with young soldiers that were, quite frankly, very malleable, and they were wonderful to deal with and to see them turn into great soldiers and great people. And then in the commercial and the corporate and public world, I was working for a number of large companies. I sat on 3 public fund boards, public company boards, and then I've sat, I think, on now 5 charity boards over my time. Here in Winston, I am currently on the board of the Salvation Army. Salvation Army here runs it's now called the Red Shield Club, used to be called the Boys and Girls Club, where we have 160 kids roughly that come after school. We provide bus service to get them to school. We have volunteer tutors, help them with their homework, get them through homework, and then the parents pick them up in the afternoons on their way home from work. The program is a spectacularly successful program. And why I bring that up is I think it's very important that the school board, the churches, other organizations provide an after-school program for the kids all the way up and even through high school if necessary, for a lot of reasons. One, it helps to get volunteers in who work as mentors. That can help them later on in life, as well as help them with the problems that a lot of kids will have and may not want to ask their parents about. But it also keeps them away from the gangs. I think many of you probably know that here in Winston-Salem, we have a gang issue. The last report I saw, and I think it might be down a little bit, was that we had 600 gang members in the Winston-Salem area. And then there were probably about 2,000 kids orbiting around that. And those kids are more the tweens, the younger kids who they meet the gangs as they come home from school. The gang members have put out that they have a really luxurious life, and they get them involved early on. And I think it's very important that we get those kids away from the gangs. Now, why did I decide to join the contest to become on the Board of Education? When the problems came out with the finances, it became obvious that there was an issue with either understanding the reports that were given. There was also a problem with leadership and how boards should be run. And quite frankly, I think who should be on boards. Now, I remember reading in the paper that one of the board members at the time said, well, the CFO said everything was fine, so we just accepted that. Another board member said something like, I should have been more brazen. I think that the board has a role not only for oversight of how things are being done, but also when things are not being done correctly, to become very vocal and to make sure that there's not only being vocal, but that you have a recommendation of how things should be fixed or could be fixed. Everybody can complain, everybody can make ideas or throw out ideas, but you really have to have a good recommendation, I think. And as I looked back over the last 5 or 6 months and saw all the things that came up, it was clear that there were a lot of times when leadership was lacking and things should have been done and should have actually been publicized of how they were done. And so I looked at that and said, I think I can do a reasonably good job with that. I have never run for public office ever in my life. I'm 76 years old. This will be the last time I ever do this. I hope I get elected. I hope that I make it through this primary because I think I bring a lot to the Board of Education and to the administration. And I think that if we can get a board in that is made up of professionals that understand finance, understand human resources, understand facilities and auditing, that's crucial. Now, some of the things that I think that we've got to do is, number one, is we have got to restore confidence in our school system. Right now, if you look back over the last 6 years, the report that just came out said that 3 of the 6 years, North Carolina was the #1 state for attracting new business. Last year, we were the #1 state for attracting new business and new jobs. Unfortunately, of the 35,000 or 36,000 jobs that were announced last year, not one of those jobs was coming to Forsyth County. They were all going somewhere else. Now, what's that mean to the school system? Well, it means a lot to the school system because when these companies look and they look at why they would move a company or a division or expand in an area, is one of the key things they look at is the school systems for a couple of reasons. One, to make sure that they can have employees that will be coming out of those school systems that they can hire. Number two, that the children of their employees will do well in a public school system. To give you an example, one of the jobs that I had, and it was with Schlumberger, was I was responsible for finding a location and moving a research center from Houston, Texas, to another location in the United States. We looked around, we hired the Austin company, which was a company that helped us with all the demographics and did all that work. And when it came down to it, we chose to set up a research center in Austin, Texas. And the reason for that, the final decision for that was the school system at the time was better in Austin, Texas than any of the other locations that we looked at, including Raleigh, the Research Triangle. So the school system is part of the economic driving process. I believe strongly that the Board of Education must have a seat at the table with the Economic Development Corporation, I think it's called here, the county, the city, and we should have a seat at the table with our legislators, our local legislators. Whether it's monthly or quarterly, I don't know what the right schedule would be, but we need to hear what they're hearing about our school systems, and they need to hear what we are hearing and need for our school systems. I'm very concerned. A report just came out in the paper, many of you probably had seen it, that the same problem that we had in our school systems that was identified last year is now occurring at the county level, that we may be running at a deficit at the county and they are drawing down the emergency funds. And to me, that is very concerning that we do it at the county level. Now, I'll give you an analogy that I've given others. Here's what I want you to think about. You are all shareholders in a company. You're a shareholder in a $750 million company because about a third or more of your taxes goes to the school system. So you have a stake in the school system. And you're doing that every year, year in and year out. So it's similar to your 401k or your pension plan. Think about it that way. $750 million. That's a large intermediate company to a small, large company, the way that they break it out. But right now, there are 79 divisions in the school system. If you think about it, there's 79 schools. Each one of them have a principal, each one of them have a budget, and each one of it should have a profit and loss statement. So now, if you were in the corporate world, you would look at your board of directors and say, okay, we have a finance guy, we have an audit guy, we have an HR guy, we have an attorney, we have this. We have all these different mix of men and women who all have different specialties. So I think it's very important as we go to the polls to look at the backgrounds of everybody and see what they are. And I've said I would make a terrible nuclear engineer, but I'll make a very good financial guy. So, you know, I think you have to look at it that way. So that's one of my major points, is that it's important for us to have the right kind of a board. Now, we have, I think the original number was 39 people. Now it's 37, I think, or something like that, running for this Board of Education. I think it's important to look at the backgrounds of every one of them. You can find information on the League of Women Voters, the Ballotpedia. You can see what people are doing. We just were asked, all of us were asked to fill out a very detailed questionnaire by the realtors here in town. I think it took me 4.5 hours to fill that thing out. It was an excellent questionnaire, but it was an excellent questionnaire for about 20 different people, 20 different organizations. I know there's another candidate sitting here. I don't know about you, but I think I've gotten 25 or 26 questionnaires to fill out, and each one of them at least takes 2 hours, excuse me. So I think it's very important for you to look at that. Now, it's been said that we have solved one of the problems. I wrote a white paper a few months ago that we needed an audit committee. And now I guess we have established an audit committee, but the audit committee is a lot different than the one that I recommended. I think an audit committee for the Board of Education, it needs to be really strong financial auditors. Again, I don't think, there are certain types of professions that can look at a spreadsheet and understand it. There are other professions that look at a spreadsheet and their eyes start to gloss over. So I think what we really need to look at is to get all of us to come up with friends that we know that are in that world of auditing and finance, to join that board or that committee, to really be a strong audit committee. Now, but more importantly, I've recommended that we hire ongoing and outside independent audit company. It can be a local company, but it's got to have a background in auditing, that reports to the Board of Education, not to the superintendent. Why? Because we're the oversight. So they need to be independent, reporting to us, not to the CFO or not to the superintendent. And that audit committee needs to do two things. One, I strongly believe they need to do what's called a forensic audit. A forensic audit is looking at every transaction to make sure that it was legal, that it was in the right fund, because we use fund accounting here, that it was in the right fund, that we didn't have $13 million moved from one fund to another fund because the superintendent decided that she wanted to do that. And that's really important. It's also really important to go back to the time when all of these problems began. Now, there are reports out there, I think there was one in the paper that said it went back to somewhere of 2017. I was able to track it back to 2018. So it goes back somewhere back then. Now, so that's a detailed report. But if we're going to restore the confidence in the Board of Education and the school system of all of the taxpayers and in outside companies, we need to know where all of that is, because otherwise people will always be talking about what the problems were, who caused them, what they started. And unfortunately, if you go back, it might be that there are some leaders in our community that could get smeared by some of this because they were in positions at the time. I'm not suggesting that we need to bring any litigation, but what I am suggesting is that we need to identify where and when they existed. And then secondly, the second part of that audit committee is that they need to be doing an ongoing procedural audit, meaning looking at it on a monthly or quarterly basis and reporting. The buzzword, or I use the term, the dog whistle this election will be transparency. Transparency can mean a lot of different things. To me, transparency means that you need to have a report that is easy to read by the non-financial professional. It's got to be in a singular location that is the official location. It can't be that somebody takes it, tears it apart, puts it out into a different location. It's got to be easy to read, it's got to be professionally done, and it's got to be done by an outside independent organization like an auditor. Okay, that's first of all. Financial statements are a different issue. Again, they have to be easy to read and understandable. We cannot just put pages and pages of spreadsheets out on a website and expect everybody to pick it up, pull out their magnifying glass and start going through line by line and understanding what they are. We need somebody, and that's where the Finance Committee comes in, to take that data and bring it down to a easy to understand report. And let's face it, with software today and with AI, it's pretty easy to do that. And so I would very, very strongly recommend that. Obviously, we have to improve the academic performance of all schools. Now, we are considered to be a large system. So I think there are 5 or 6 large systems: Charlotte, Raleigh, Greensboro, us, a few others. If you look at the difference in academic performance between us and Raleigh, Raleigh is 50% higher than we are. So their academic performance is at 66%, which means that they're at, doing very well against their benchmarks. We're at 44%. So we have to get that up. It's absolutely crucial at the 3rd grade level, 10th grade level, and all the different levels. So again, that brings in the part of being the economic driver. Excuse me. Along with academic performance, the graduation rate right now, I think the graduation rate here is right around 90%. Now, I'm not sure what that really means, because if you only have an academic performance of 44%, how can you have a graduation rate of 90%? I think, there's got to be something to go there. But what's really important is we have somewhere between a 15 and 30% truancy rate here in our school system. Now, why is that? Because not every kid wants to go to college. Not every kid will excel in the college prep classes. A lot of kids, they're good with their hands and they're good with their mind. My younger daughter, her birth father was bipolar and dyslexic. I could read what she wrote because she wrote phonetically, but when she went into the classroom, she would get poor grades because she wrote phonetically. But she was a great artist, and she was a great draftsperson. Fortunately, where we were, we had a VOTEC program, and she was able to go into the VOTEC program and learn how to do artwork, and she's done exceptionally well. So we need to have a very strong VOTEC program. Here we have a good CTE. I think that stands for Computer Technology and Engineering. And I'm going to throw out some numbers or some ideas to you in a second. What we need, not every kid wants to do that, but we are desperately in need of welders. We are desperately in need of plumbers, pipe fitters, carpenters, you name it, the trades. When I was growing up, this was in the 50s and 60s, we had separate high schools for the VOTEC side. And the kids went to these separate high schools. Now they did learn math and English, but they learned welding. They learned what they wanted to learn. And they became, very exceptional in their field. There's a young lady here who we talked one time about her husband who went that way, and he excelled at what he did. So we have a company here that here in Forsyth County, that can't find welders. He can't grow his business because he can't find welders. There's another company here. A couple of brothers started but they didn't start, they bought a company that was in the HVAC business. They want to expand too, but they can't find HVAC techs. Here, I'm going to throw out something to me that is really frightening. As a military background, with my military background, right now, the U.S. has, I think, 36 ships that are allocated to be built. Right now in the United States, we can only build 2 a year. 2. We are having ships built by Koreans, the Korean companies, and Japanese companies right now because we can't do it. We can't find welders. We can't find pipe fitters. We can't find the electricians to do it. We in the Navy, and again, I'm not a Navy guy, but the Navy has converted their shipyards into maintenance only because that's all they can do at this point. That's all the trades that we have. We've just closed 2 schools. We could take those 2 schools and turn them into VOTEC schools, and I think that's really crucial. The CTE school, if you've seen it, go onto their website, is beautiful. But some kids are there full-time, some kids are there only half-time. Again, growing up, these kids went there full-time. They pumped them out. They did great. And there was a kid that was basically my age that lived right across the street. He became a fireman, and he retired from the firefighters. It was great. So I think that's really crucial. It would also help our truancy, and that's getting back to the truancy, because these kids, they want to learn something, but they don't necessarily want to go to college. So I think that's important. Now, I'm probably going, I don't know if I'm going over, but I'm going to keep going. The last thing maybe not the last thing, but an important thing is we've got to protect the taxpayer as well as the students and the teachers. Now, there are a couple of things I want to talk about. One, the other night, they asked a question. I was at a forum, and a question was asked, would you ever vote to close a school if there was an illness? Now, it was a pretty wide open question, and I don't think I gave the answer that I wanted to, but basically, I don't think we should ever close schools. I think if kids are sick, you take them home, you keep them at home, you Take them to your physician, you find out what's wrong, but everybody else should be healthy. Same thing with, I guess, with measles. If, we have down in South Carolina now, not a measles epidemic, but a large swath of measles coming out. Same thing, if your kids have been immunized, there should not be a reason to keep them home. If the kids are sick and because they haven't been immunized, then you keep them home. But overall, you shouldn't close schools like we did before. That's my feeling. So I'll leave it at that. But we need to protect the taxpayers, the students, and the teachers. We were talking earlier about the role of the assistant principals. Now, the assistant principal has a couple of different jobs, but he or she, one of their jobs is to be responsible for discipline at the schools. So I don't think it's fair to them to bring them in and say, oh, you are responsible for this and you're responsible for the sheriff's resource officers, the student resource officers, and making sure that, discipline is handed out. And oh, by the way, if there's something that occurs in the hallway, you need to take care of it. We need to train those people to make sure that they have the right stuff to be able to take care of that problem. We also need to right size the SROs. Right now, if you think about it this way, Whitaker Elementary might only need one SRO, and if they need any, but they might need one SRO, and more for what happens outside the school than inside the school. But another school, and let's just use Reynolds, might need 3 because of the size of Reynolds. And if something occurs in the cafeteria and the SROs over in the gymnasium, it's not going to be it's going to take too long for that SRO to get over there. So I think there's a lot of training that needs to go on, and I would like to see that. From the taxpayer standpoint, we all got a tax increase. If you're a homeowner, we all got a tax increase this year. And here's something I want you all to think about. I will become a nuisance to a lot of people because back in 2004, before I was ever here, the whole thing with the education lottery came up. And there were a lot of people that voted against it. There were a lot of people that voted for it. The education lottery had a word in there that apparently said it was exclusively to be used for education. However, when it finally passed, that word was taken out. So, if you look at what happened, the lottery, I think the profit off of the lottery is about 35%. So on revenues of about, let's call it $20 billion, 35%, it's around $8 billion. And don't hold me to these numbers, but we'll use those. When it first started out, the profits were, maybe $6 billion. So 35% was roughly $1 billion or whatever the number is, $2 billion. So the government at the state level started siphoning off money from the lottery as it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and the state government got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think if I remember, again, I'm off the top of my head, the numbers were, at the time, the state budget was $10 billion, and it's now $29 billion or some ratio like that. It went up threefold. The amount of money that came off of the lottery went up similarly, and the amount of money that came to the schools stayed about the same. So we need to get our state boards of education, or county boards of education, state board of education, counties, cities, to get to these state legislators and get that word put back in so that the lottery comes exclusively to the board, to the education. And it doesn't substitute the money that would have come out of the state, because the state should still be giving us money. It should be an additive. Okay, you probably have seen these numbers. North Carolina is ranked 50th out of 50 states in the amount of spending per student. It's about $13,800. If you throw in DC, we become 51st. I mean, we're even lower than DC. So that number has got to go up. Here in Forsyth County, we're right around there from what I, could look at the numbers, that if you take 750 million and divide it by 49 or 50,000, it comes out to be roughly the same. So we've got to get that per student spending up. The easiest way and the way that it was designed was from the lottery. Now, the state might have to do something from a budget standpoint at their level, but that money was intended for education. There were very smart people. Dale Falwell was one. He voted against it, but he thought that to take that money away was not something that was the right to do. And that would affect us as shareholders and as taxpayers, because we've got to get that money up to the students. The way to do it is through the lottery, and it's not to keep taxing the properties. I think the last thing I'd like to say, and I've been going on and on, but there was one meeting I went to, again with the young lady who talked about her husband, and a teacher who's retired now talked about a student who came to class, and he was in 7th grade. He drove to class, which was one giveaway to me that he drove and he was in 7th grade. I didn't think I drove until I was a junior in high school. But came into class, walked in late, was terribly disrespectful to the teacher, walked up to one of the walls, carved the number 13 in the wall. And then there was a test. He wrote 13 on the test. Later on his desk, he carved 13 into the desk. And then he even set one of the books on fire. The assistant principal came. Finally, they took him out. And because of the code of conduct that the school currently has, he was counseled, I guess. The teacher was told to take their kids outside and let them, go out and relax outside. They brought them back in, and the student was back in the classroom. So you'll hear a lot of candidates talk about the code of conduct, and I read it, and it was I was flabbergasted at how lenient it was. And there was no consequence to the child, no consequence to the parents, if you will, one last thing, and this is another statistical thing that I think is interesting. When I was a young person, I think when I was 15, I grew up in suburban Philadelphia, and there was this new county mental health hospital built. And we used to ride our bikes through the parking lot because it was so cool and it was brand new and all this. So I did a little research just the other night. Back when I was 15, there were 500,000 mental health beds in the United States. And today there are 12,000 mental health beds in the United States. And I asked AI to break it out. And I said, can you break it out for these beds lower than 18 and higher than 18 years old? And it did, and it said that basically there were about 150,000 of those beds were for young people under 18. Now, my second daughter, again, her birth father was bipolar, and unfortunately, she started cutting and doing those things that bipolar kids do. And fortunately, we had spectacular insurance, and we were able to send her to a residential treatment center. And these residential treatment centers cost about $35,000 a month. So the average family can't do it. And the average insurance company won't put up for it, with it. My daughter was there for 6 months. They got her the right medications, and she went to school all during that time. It was spectacular. My wife and I drove from Tampa, Florida to Orlando, Florida 3 days a week. It was just a spectacular program. But for $205,000 for that 6-month period of time, that would have been just, disastrous for most families. It would have been disastrous for us at the time. So I bring all this up because my daughter turned out fabulously. She's 26, she's a great mom, she's a great kid. I just can't say enough about her. She's just wonderful. But I give I give all the credit to my wife, because I didn't have anything to do with it. My wife did everything right. But I give a lot of credit to that residential treatment facility. And unfortunately, not every family can afford that. And I bring this all up because I think that at the county level, we've got to have some kind of beds for these kids who was carving 13 for MS-13 into the schools, because that's what those were designed for back in the 50s and 60s. We've got to reinstitute that. Or we have to have some kind of insurance policy to be able to have those kids go to those kind of programs. All right, well, thanks very much. I appreciate the time that you've taken to listen to me. Again, I'm Bob Weiss. I think I bring a lot to a board from my experience. I bring a lot to the Board of Education because of my leadership experience, my financial experience. And I'm going to be here to do the best job for the taxpayers, the students, and the teachers to make sure that we have what can become a world-class school system. Thanks again. Vote for Bob Weiss, number 6 on the ballot.